Anyway, Richard, enough cat bants.
Yeah, I think
should we talk something else?
Yeah, I think it might be time for your interview. Tell us who we've got coming up next.
Oh, yeah. So I had a nice chat with Andrew James Spooner.
In a restaurant?
Actor, voice actor. No.
Really?
No, we did this over Skype.
Oh, okay, fine.
Because he's been very busy working on a few other bits and pieces.
Yeah.
And our chat is split into two parts. We chatted generally about puppetry and his career and all that sort of stuff. And then we did a second little follow-up piece, which is more Firestorm focused.
Yeah.
So we chat about all sorts of stuff. Hopefully you enjoy it. If not, then do write in.
Or listen to some others from previous episodes.
Pick
one you think you might enjoy.
We had a great fun chat. So here he is, Andrew James Spooner.
I'm Andrew James Spooner. I'm a actor, puppeteer, mostly puppeteer these days. Started back in the 1990s. My first proper job as a puppeteer was Spitting Image. And after that, I went on to do Muppet Treasure Island, 101 Dalmatians, and lots of things for kind of TV and commercials and stuff over the years. I kind of dabble in voiceovers as well. Not as much, so people might have heard my voice on adverts for sushi recently. That's my claim to fame, sushi adverts. But yeah, I'm mostly known for my puppetry stuff.
Excellent.
There you go.
Well, thank you very much for, having this very professional and well planned out chat with me.
Oh, hugely professional. We're on top of this technologically, I can tell you.
Yeah, if not content-wise. And also, you forgot to mention famous beard wearer.
Yeah, I think that's just because I'm a science fiction fan. I think it's genetic. You just grow a beard. You've got no choice in the matter. You wake up one morning and you've got long hair and a beard. You've become a walking cliche.
But you carry it off very well. And
thank you.
With all that long hair, I'm extremely jealous.
It must get drafty up there.
Well, drafty in the winter and extremely hot currently.
Oh, see, I'm jealous now because it's so hot outside that I die in this weather.
Oh, well, if it makes you feel any better, I also am, turning into a cherry lollipop gradually as my solar panel gets burned. Anyway, this isn't what we're here to talk about at all. I don't know why we're talking about this.
Let's talk more about hair.
Yeah. No, that's not. I'll feel terrible and jealous. You're really here because you worked with me on something, which we'll get to later on.
Sure.
You were puppet coordinator on the mini pilot for Firestorm, for Gerry Anderson Firestorm, which has been mentioned before, and we'll
dip into that.
We'll delve into it in a bit.
Okay.
But having gone into work in puppetry, I'm asking you a leading question, I'm hoping, was there any influence from watching puppet shows as a child, or did you just fall into this for some other bizarre reason?
There was definitely an influence. That had to be. I mean, I am like we just discussed a walking cliche. I'm a sci-fi nerd who grew up in the 70s, so my entire life was surrounded by things like reruns of all the Gerry Anderson shows. ITV just seemed to have them on a perpetual loop, and shows like Doctor Who, Star Wars, The Muppets. So all of those influences were there. Whether I was aware of it at the time, I don't know. I think the first time I ever really thought, oh, this is interesting, I think people might do this puppetry thing for a living, was when I saw Labyrinth, which would have been 82 maybe, something like that, 82, 84, something like that.
Yes.
Yeah, and they did a behind the scenes thing on Blue Peter, and there were all these puppeteers, and I was like, wait a second, do they get paid for doing this? Because that's awesome. But to be honest, I didn't know what to do with it, because how do you even begin to get into something like that? So I kind of didn't even really think of it as something that I could do, but I was still interested in the industry. I was still interested in film, TV, media of all kinds, really. So after I went to school, I went to college and did an A-level in drama, and then after that I went off to drama school. And it wasn't really until I finished drama school that I was kind of thinking really hard about what it was I wanted to do, because I really enjoyed performing, but I didn't like being on camera. I found it tensed me up. I just didn't like it at all. But then I was thinking, well, there's the puppetry thing. I still I'm still very interested in it because obviously I'd followed the Henson project over the years, and I thought, well, maybe this is something that I could get into. And I wrote a letter cold to the Jim Henson Creature Workshop. They had a workshop in Camden at the time. And I just lucked out that at that particular point in their history, they were looking for a new batch of puppeteers because they were leading into filming Muppet Treasure Island. And a lot of people that they'd used in the past had now become so successful they'd gone off and opened their own companies. So they needed new young puppeteers. And I just fell into it, really.
Amazing timing.
Yeah, I mean, complete fluke. And I actually remember getting the phone call. I was at college, and the switchboard at college got a phone call from the Henson workshop and said, would you be free to come and do some workshops for a couple of weeks? And I wasn't really, but I said yes.
Of course you say yes when these things come up.
Yeah, exactly. I pulled a sickie. I was very ill for 2 weeks. So ill I had to go to Camden.
To be a puppeteer.
Exactly. And that's really where it started, because as soon as I'd done a couple of commercial jobs for them, once it's on your CV that you've worked for the Henson Company, certainly as a puppeteer, it tends to, opens doors. It's like being an actor and working for the RSC. It's like, oh, he's a puppeteer, but he's serious because he's worked for the Jim Henson Company. So,
You're a proper one, not just a madman with a sock with some eyes.
Oh, I'm definitely that as well. There has to be an element of that in your personality, otherwise you'd never be a puppeteer.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah, I mean, it is an unusual occupation, puppeteering, and making other things come to life.
Yeah,
channeling your theatrical energy down rods or strings or up into a...
I know, it is bizarre. The first job I ever had was on a commercial for the then Family Channel. So this was long before things like the Children's Channel on Sky. It was the Family Channel. It was the first thing I ever worked on, and I was a sofa. And I just remember thinking, 3 years at drama school, learning Shakespeare, and now I'm a sofa.
You really made it.
But I was thinking about it the other day, and I was thinking, I think it is a slightly bizarre career to go into, but bearing in mind my interest growing up, it kind of makes sense, because I was interested in the performance side of things, acting and whatnot, but I was also really interested in the technical side of things. I was at one point I wanted to be a model maker. I wanted to go into special effects. And when I think about puppetry, it's like it's a melding of those two disciplines, because every shot that you create as a puppeteer is a special effects shot, because you're trying to create the illusion of life in, as you say, these inanimate objects. So that is a special effect in a sense. So it's kind of a melding of those two disciplines. There's the technical aspect and the performance aspect. That, I really enjoy that stuff.
And going into it, I mean, assuming at drama school you didn't do any kind of puppetry elements, or
no,
or did you?
No.
So how do you even begin being a puppeteer? How do you kind of get the feeling for it? Is it totally trial and error? Do you end up kind of transplanting your mind into that of the puppet? I just don't know how you think, really.
I don't know. I mean, I think I practiced a lot at home, and as I said, I grew up in the 70s, and one of the things that my dad had a pretty good income, and he came home one day with a video camera, and that was amazing because you could plug a camera into your TV and you could start filming it, and you could see the results back instantly. And also what you could do is you could set the camera up on a tripod, and you've immediately got a camera and a monitor, and you can see what you're doing, which is essentially how all that stuff is filmed. You have the cameras, and then you have a feed to a monitor so the puppeteers can see what they're doing. And it was really just hours and hours of mucking around at home with various store-bought puppets, and just seeing what you could do, seeing what stuff you could get away with, really, what worked and what didn't. And I think in my case, I probably didn't do that as much as some people I know who are really, really obsessed with puppetry. And it was, I got lucky. It was almost instinct for me. So when people ask me, how do you do it? I have to say, I don't know. But in terms of what you said was interesting about transplanting your brain almost into the mind of a puppet, is I find that when I put a puppet on, the puppet almost takes over, and not in a weird supernatural way or psychopathic way.
Sure?
Well, yeah, we've all seen.
I have seen you puppeteering, so
It is kind of unnerving, isn't it? But it does. It releases something in me as a performer, which was the thing that was kind of holding me back with being on camera. There's a freedom.
Interesting.
There's a freedom to it because you're performing it, but it's not you that you're seeing on the screen.
yeah.
If that makes sense. So
Absolutely, but I think it's weird because it works for you in that way. But one of the most exciting things for me to see is, especially live, is it working for the audience in that way.
Right. Yes.
As well, that the sort of transplanting of consciousness thing, because we had a bit on the Firestorm shoot where an important man came to the studio, and you guys brought one of the characters to life and gently mocked this important man as the puppet.
Oh,
and
yes,
there were four of you stood around
Yes.
performing this.
Yes.
And obviously the voice, you were doing a voice which was obviously coming out of your face, which was quite a distance from the puppet. But the guy was just staring. I mean, he was completely focused on this, 70 centimetre character stood on the floor. And that's one of the things I really, really love. Obviously, you see it more obviously in live puppetry and theatre puppetry than you do on the telly when everyone's hidden.
Yeah.
But that's part of the magic, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's weird. It kind of when it works like that, it's kind of like the adult is tuning in back to their kind of childhood psyche, because children can do that anyway. I've done it with my two kids. My son Monty is 6, and when I get a puppet out and talk to him, he knows it's dad. He knows it's dad, but it also isn't. It's a completely separate character, and yet I'm there, and I'm not a ventriloquist by any definition. So I'm standing there, and my lips are flapping, and it's very very obviously me that's doing it. But he doesn't care. It's an independent character, and when an adult can tune into that, well, you've kind of won at that point, because then they're reacting to the puppet as though it was a real character. At that point, you've won. You've done your job. And and certainly on that project that we were working on, that was what I was aiming for, which was something a bit more naturalistic and less puppety, for want of a better word. People have an idea of what puppety means, and I wanted it to be much smaller than that and much more realistic. And I think we did it.
Yeah, absolutely, we must have done. Okay, well, look, I'm going to rewind a bit through your life now.
Oh God, okay.
For this reacting to puppetry, well, because you said taking people back to their sort of childlike state of watching puppets. Can you recall, maybe not your first, but certainly your earliest Gerry Anderson puppetry viewing moments? Are you a Thunderbirds kid, or Joe 90, or
Thunderbirds?
What are your memories of it?
I was aware of Thunderbirds. These are very vague memories because obviously it was the 1970s. I don't remember them playing Thunderbirds that often, if I'm really honest. I do remember seeing the movie Thunderbirds A Go on a bank holiday. I do remember watching that. But really my first memories are Stingray. And that's the one that to this day is kind of my go-to, because it was the one that was on all the time, and I just loved the design of Stingray and just the whole concept, because it was almost an inversion of Thunderbirds. It's underwater rather than out in space. And Joe 90 was the other one that I got a bit obsessed by, because I couldn't quite grab the concept behind it, that he would get into this weird machine, and it's been a long time since I've watched it. He would get into the chair, the thing would spin around.
Yeah, the big rat.
And then is that what it's called? Big rat. And then he essentially became somebody else, or he had the skills of somebody else.
Yeah, exactly.
It's almost like the Matrix stole it years later, isn't it?
Well, it's been that concept has been reused quite a few times. Joss Whedon's Dollhouse.
Oh yeah.
Very, very similar.
Yeah.
I think Ben 10 probably shares some genetic material with it too.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, it was a good concept. But
Stingray was the one for me. Anything can happen in the next half hour.
Yes, happy memories of that.
Oh God, yeah.
When watching that or looking back, was there any kind of conscious awareness of the fact that it was puppets?
Do you know what? No, I think the thing that appealed to me as a boy very obviously was the vehicles and the science fiction element and the explosions and all that stuff, and that's the stuff that I kind of zeroed in on, even with Thunderbirds. And it isn't really until later on that you start really becoming aware that it's puppetry and it's marionettes. And it's funny that you should mention it, because there's been a few conversations that I've had recently based on there was a book I was reading, and I can't remember the name of it. I'll try and dig it out. And they're talking about, you know, puppet shows, kids puppet shows that we grew up with, and invariably they seem to miss out Thunderbirds. They seem to miss out Stingray, because
Interesting.
I know exactly, right. And I'm wondering if that's because it's married. I don't know. I mean, I think it's because, well, your dad, from what I know, always wanted to work with actors rather than puppets anyway. So the fact that it was puppets was almost incidental. It wasn't built around the fact that it was puppets. It just happened to have puppets in it.
Yeah.
If you see what I mean.
If anything, he was trying to avoid the puppetry being an aspect of it. It was trying to make it into something filmic and much bigger than
much
puppetry
more
traditionally allowed or was traditionally built around.
Exactly, and I think that's because that's what the focus was. That's why, I mean, stuff like the Muppets is very obviously built around the fact that it's puppets, whereas the Gerry Anderson shows aren't. They're built around the fact that they're high concept science fiction adventure stories wrapped up in half an hour that just happen to have puppets in.
Yeah.
And certainly, I mean, the big Gerry Anderson show that I really liked when I was older was Space 1999, and at that point he's gone beyond puppetry completely, and he's pretty much doing what he wanted to do, I guess, and that still stands up really well, that show. It's brilliant.
Yeah, but again, epic.
Yeah, absolutely. Those sets were huge.
They were big stars and yes, interplanetary, intergalactic stories. And,
yeah,
all the stuff that you associate with Andersonness.
Absolutely.
But then, so in those big sci-fi landscapes of shows like Stingray, do you think that then the puppets have any kind of benefit of giving you a different access point, or somehow making the world almost more believable? Because it's not humans plonked in,
I see what you mean.
A plywood and plastic kit bashed universe.
Yes.
But because the whole thing is handmade, including the characters, I just wonder if that.
I think it does help. There's no jarring element that kind of takes you out of the reality of the show. Each show has its own internal logic. And its own, very, very specifically designed universe. So yeah, it doesn't quite. It's funny you should mention that, because I remember going to see Avatar and thinking that all the stuff on Pandora with the aliens looked great, but suddenly when there was a human in it, it felt jarring because they felt superimposed. They felt dropped into this entirely created universe. And I think you're right. I think because they're puppets, it almost makes it more believable. Yeah. And also, I guess, I don't know, but maybe you can get away with more because they're puppets in terms of the action and violence, maybe, because it's puppets.
Yeah.
You can do things that would be maybe a little bit too intense for kids to watch if it was real people.
Well, yeah, Captain Scarlet, I mean, dead puppets, bleeding, drowning, I mean, horrible things happen to them.
Yeah.
So maybe it does mean you can get away with more.
I don't know, I'm scarred for life because of that.
Well, it doesn't seem to have done you any permanent harm.
No.
So you did see Scarlet then as well?
Yeah, not as much. I don't know whether that was just because it wasn't being repeated as much, but I definitely saw it. But Stingray was the one for me.
Yeah, okay. And since you went into the Henson world, which is a very different form of puppetry, although I think they're all so connected by performance translated into an animate object. It doesn't matter what the method of translation is.
Yeah.
But I'm still interested in what you think of the differences and perhaps a hierarchy, in your opinion, of the best method of puppetry. Do you think that the Henson method, the sort of, I was going to say the up the bum method. I don't mean that. Sorry.
I'll be here all week.
Apologies. Anyway, the Henson type or rod type or strung marionettes. Do you think any one has a kind of inherent set of advantages over the others?
I think they all have their own advantages. I think the thing with Henson's is, especially when they kind of moved on to the movies rather than the TV show. The TV show was very much the up the bum method that we're going to call it. I think that, and that's really because that's a really easy method to shoot, and you can get things done really quickly. I did a TV show called The Furchester Hotel a few years ago, and we were shooting essentially an episode a day of that with that kind of puppetry, and that was about 12 minutes of footage a day, which is a lot to get through.
A huge amount.
But by the time Henson's had got to the movies, they're using all kinds of techniques. They're using that method, but they're also using animatronics. They're using actors in full prosthetic costumes. They're using rod puppetry. And really, at that point, what they're doing is they're looking at a shot and going, what method best suits what we're trying to achieve in this shot? And I think that's probably the best way to approach puppetry, is that you get your storyboards in, and then you look at the shots and you go, okay, which method is going to make this shot look the best? And that way you're changing it up all the time. You're changing the way you do things, so the audience almost can't keep up. So it's almost like sleight of hand. They can never quite figure out how you're doing it. I think that's probably the way to go forward with it, yeah.
And that's part of the magic of it.
Yeah.
And actually, that very neatly segues into what we were doing on Firestorm, I think. Although not necessarily just with the puppets, but the whole thing overall.
Yeah.
So for those who aren't quite up to speed, Firestorm is a new ultra marionation puppet series that we are trying to get into production for global broadcast.
Let's say global dominance. Come on,
global domination.
Yeah, definitely.
It's all practical, pretty much. It's real sets, real explosions, puppets, obviously, and it's kind of like a cross between Thunderbirds and Scarlet in terms of its tone and look and color and all that kind of stuff. And we're using a lot of different practical techniques. So I met you, Andrew, through. God, who was it who introduced us?
Do you know what? I can't remember now.
Another puppeteer who was too busy, essentially, and and basically Firestorm has been one of the biggest R&D exercises of all time.
Yes,
trying to work out how exactly to do this, what tricks to use, what practical techniques to use, what digital enhancements to use. Those puppets are primarily rod driven, with animatronic faces. I know you've already said this to me, how I just threw you in at the deep end, but I would love you to just give me a kind of overview of how those puppets ended up working and how they ended up working well, but also the challenges of just being thrown in and saying, here are some ready-made puppets, good luck.
Go do it. Do you know what? That's often, and I think I might have said this to you in the past, that's often, I quite like it when people do that, when they just throw you in, because you've got no choice but to problem solve.
Yes,
you've just got to do it. And if you've got a lot of time to do a lot of R&D, there can be a lot of faffing around and not really making decisions. With Firestorm, we were in the position where it's like, well, we're shooting now, so we've got to make this work somehow. Yeah, primarily they were rod puppets with animatronic faces. So what you've got is rods on the legs, on the arms, coming out of the back to stabilize the body, another rod coming out the back which controls the roll and the tilt of the head, and then you've got another puppeteer with a radio control unit who's operating the eyes left and right, a blink, and then the various mouth shapes. So really the challenge in that kind of job is you've got maybe 3 puppeteers on the body at any one time, and then you've got the other puppeteer on the face, and it's about creating a cohesive performance that doesn't look like the puppet's just gone mental and arms and legs everywhere, which is why it did happen occasionally. I haven't seen those outtakes yet. I should see those. But because the lead-in time to this was virtually nothing. It was literally, you're on it, I'll see you next week. So when it came to putting the team together of puppeteers, I went for a group that I'd already worked with on a show called Newsoids for ITV, because we'd all worked together, and so we didn't need to spend a week just getting to know each other and getting to know each other's rhythms and how we work. We could just literally run in, and I could not throw the puppet puppet at them, that's disrespectful, but hand the puppet over graciously and say, right, this is what we need to do. And Steve Begg, the director, kind of came up to me on the first day and said, I've got no idea what to do with puppets. I've never done this before. And actually, that's great, because it means he's got no preconceived ideas, and there's stuff that we can experiment with, and we did. And yes, a lot of the R&D was essentially just trying to figure out, right, you don't want to be having to go in and remove the puppeteers digitally with every shot, because it's time consuming, it costs a lot of money. So what we always try and do is find positions where we can attach the rods and hide the puppeteers where you can't see any of that stuff in the shot. So essentially, you shot it, and that's exactly how it's going to be seen when it's broadcast. Yeah. But that takes time. But having said that, they performed brilliantly, these puppets, and I don't think. I mean, we had a couple of moments where, you know, one of them would start blinking uncontrollably, and we weren't quite sure why. We had a few moments like that, but for the most part, they performed brilliantly, and we kind of sped through it. I was kind of surprised how fast we got through some of the shots, but again, that's testament to the way the puppets were built, because they look beautiful, and they look really good in close-up as well. And also,
amazingly so,
the team of puppeteers, because we all knew each other. We were able to get things done fairly quickly and fairly efficiently, and there were no arguments, which is great.
No, there weren't any, were there?
No,
other than
none.
me keeping you waiting up in the puppet suite for hours and hours.
We're used to that.
Yeah.
We're used to that.
It was a good experience, but it was really interesting watching you guys with a sort of non-verbal shorthand going on. You know, you try things, and then there'd just be a little look, or somebody would be trying something in between takes, and everyone's paying attention and going, "Oh, I see what they're doing there."
Yes.
Almost by trying to put it into words, I destroy it. It's magic, but there was something really lovely, and like I said earlier on, that moment where you all spontaneously performed for this important visitor, it wasn't pre-planned.
No.
You know, nobody had said, "Oh, let's pretend that he's waking up off the table, jump down, walk over." Look, you know, it all just happened very naturally and spontaneously, and that was part of the magic. I think there were quite a few moments where you guys, you know, generated an unexpected moment of performance.
Well, that's partly that group. They've all worked together so much, and a lot of them come from a theatre background, so they've done a lot of, you know, live theatre, and they've also done improvisation with puppets. So that's where that comes in, that ability to literally just pick something up and bring it to life immediately. It's really about listening. It's about all the puppeteers listening to each other, as you say, non-verbally, and kind of the unwritten rule is that the person that is on the head is the leader. That's the person that's leading the performance, and it's about everybody else just coming in behind and just following where that puppeteer leads. But yeah, no, they were brilliant, and I would work with those guys over and over and over again if I could.
Well, so will we.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah. And from what you've seen so far, what are your impressions of the show and what we've come up with? And you can be, totally honest. If you think what we're doing is terrible, then we'll end this interview right here.
And delete. Look, I'm a puppeteer, so there are always going to be those little moments that I watch and go, "Oh, why did I do that?" It's like being critical of your own acting performance. But having said that, I've only seen the trailer so far. I've not seen the full episode. How long does that run, actually?
Total running time, opening to close, I think is about 9:45.
Wow,
that's across the titles too.
Right. I mean, I can't wait to see it, because what I liked about it was how dynamic it was, and it felt like you were watching an action movie. It was fast paced. It was epic, and I think the style of puppetry that we're using with the rods and the animatronic faces kind of lends itself to that kind of action. There were certain shots that we couldn't get. I really wanted to get a kind of John Woo leaping across the corridor, you know, flying through the air shooting kind of shot, and I'm pretty sure we could have done it, but we just, unfortunately, we didn't have time. But I think it looks amazing. I think I don't know if people are gonna mistake it for CGI, because I don't think it looks anything like a CGI show would. And that's what's so good about it, because it's like my kids are still fairly young, so they watch children's TV, and virtually every show has a CG element in it, a computer generated image. And when a show like Firestorm comes along and you see it's completely different, it's got a different kind of tactile nature to it, it's got a different look to it, and I think it's brilliant. I think it's absolutely fantastic, and I can't wait for more people to see it, because I mean, we've been sitting on this for quite a while now. Yeah. And we want a series. Again, that's what we want.
We absolutely want a series, but the length of time has just been as it part of a continuing R&D process again.
Yeah.
Finding out what works in terms of even like the speed of editing and the types of shots that we've chosen, and little bits of post-production which maybe improve things without taking away from the puppetry, or enhance the model shots. So it's been really interesting. But I can't wait for people to see it either.
No, I mean,
see it
there's all kinds of R&D stuff. I mean, it's like, I think if we ever went when we go to a series, I'm not going to say if, when we go to a series,
use the W word.
You've got to. The one thing would be, we've got to make the puppets lighter, because they weighed an absolute ton, and one of our puppeteers, Emily, on a particular day was really struggling, because bizarrely it's not the shots where the puppets are running around and doing the action sequences that hurt you as a puppeteer. It's the stuff when they're standing still and you're locked into one position, and she was pretty much locked into one position for an entire afternoon. I think we pretty much killed her.
She recovered.
Yeah, she's still not talking to me, but
that's probably for another reason. Nothing personal, of course. Anyway, so hopefully people will see more of that soon. If they want to look up more, you can look up gerryanderson.co.uk/Firestorm, obviously.
Very nice.
And if you really want to see it, then you should definitely email your broadcaster of choice, wherever you are in the world, and say, have you seen this? I want to see this. Honestly, it does make a difference. It's so weird.
Wow, really?
Yeah, but
cool.
I mean, a bit of feeling from a broadcaster that an audience wants to see a particular thing, and Firestorm is not the norm. Puppetry and all practical stuff is not most of what you see now, but that's one of the reasons I think it'll work.
Yes, definitely.
And what have you been up to since, Andrew? What's been keeping you busy? I've seen you've been working with the lovely Dirk Maggs.
Yes. No, I mean, that was pretty much a dream come true for me, to be honest. Dirk is somebody who I've been aware of since I was a teenager. I think, what did he do? He did a Judge Dredd production that went out on Radio 1, and I remember buying the cassettes and just wearing them out. And I've always been interested in radio and audio, and he's a Muppet fan, so we kind of connected on Facebook, and the next thing you know, I'm in Alien Sea of Sorrows for Audible, which was fantastic, as Silent Dave. Yes, Silent Dave in a radio production. I'm aware of the irony.
Brilliant.
And I've just done another one, which I'm very pleased about as well, because it's Terry Pratchett, and I'm such a Pratchett fan. And that's Unseen Academicals, and that is coming out on Audible at the end of July, I believe. But that's all I can say about that. I can't say anything else.
Don't give away any secrets. And if people want to find out more about you, where can they find you on the internet?
Well, if they're weird enough and want to, there's my website, which is www.andrewjamesspooner.com. That's easy. I try and update it. I should probably update it now. It's getting a bit dusty. But I'm mostly active on Twitter, and I'm on there as @TheOnlySpoon.
The Only Spoon.
Yes, excellent. I was very pleased when I got hold of that tag. Yes.
That's perfect. Fantastic. Well, we've covered everything I wanted to cover.
Fantastic.
Including the beard and Dirk Maggs and Firestorm and all that. Is there anything you'd like to sign off with before I get rid of you?
I'm going to echo what you said. Get out there and advertise Firestorm. If you want to see it, make some noise, because that kind of groundswell of support, they can't ignore it, can they? And I think we do have something very special, and not wanting to, toot my own horn or anything, but I think some of the puppetry in it was amazing, and I think we've got the potential to do something that hasn't been done on this scale before, this style of puppetry anyway. And I think, I know, go out there, shout to the skies that we all want to see Firestorm.
and hopefully we'll make a full series. Hurrah!
Fantastic.
Keep us busy for a while.
Yeah.
Right, Andrew, thank you so much for your time. You've been brilliant.
Thank you.
I'm sure we'll speak to you again when Firestorm's in production.
Thank you very much,
There we
Jamie.
go. Thank you very
Great.
much, Mr. Spooner.
Yeah.
Now, I will say, if you're listening to this, chances are, well, you may well already follow Andrew on Twitter because he's quite a prolific Twitterer.
He is.
How can one find him on Twitter, Richard?
Well, he's at the Only Spoon, which is rather
Only
nice, isn't it?
Spoon.
At the
There you
Only
go.
Spoon on Twitter. Yes.
So do go and give him a follow for more similar bants, and he's also a prolific user of hashtags as well.
Is he now?
Yeah, so watch out for them hashtags.
Great. Fantastic. Yeah, another very, very interesting interview.